Hi. I'd like to take some time today and talk about leadership. And leadership as it pertains to the fire ground and to the fire station. It's kind of a big question. What is the leadership? What is a good leader? Who are good leaders? I'm not sure I have all the answers, but what I do have is a little bit of experience leading a fire service or the fire department or engine company, and I picked up some things along the way, and I want to talk to you about those today. Some of those things I picked up by watching who I believe are good leaders. In my presentation today, I'll refer to General Colin Powell. I think his leadership style is amazing. I picked up some things from my parents. My dad was a pretty good leader in as much that what he taught me, I use today in the fire ground. Everybody I've ever encountered in the fire service, whether it was when I was a rookie or when I became promoted to a chief, I've learned something from. Now remember, you're not just learning from the good leaders. I've learned just as much from the bad ones as well. So what I'm going to ask you today is, you think you're ready to step up and be a leader? The fire service is looking for leadership. And I think you guys have the opportunity and the ability to do that. Let me start with a quote from General Powell. Leadership is the art of accomplishing more than the science of management says is possible. And I like this quote because I remember when I was back in college and I was taking these management classes and these supervisory classes, there was all these different styles they were talking about. There was the X's and the Y's and the Z's and all of this. The 1950s boss versus the 1970s. How do you deal with people? I was confused, and I really started thinking about the fact that leading somebody or leading an organization or leading a company has to do about you personally, not with what the science says you have to do. So let's talk about picking the right person. For those of you who have to select the next leaders in your organization, here's some thoughts. First of all, I want to talk about lead, follow, or get out of the way. Find the person who wants to lead or the person who wants to follow. And there are also those people that just need to get out of the way because they're going to interfere with the other two. Find the person who wants to step up and lead the organization. Because if you don't look for them, somebody will. The organization will find, the company will find the leader. They'll define it themselves. And sometimes that's not always a good thing. Next thing is pick the right person for the job. Avoid the Peter principle. What that means is that Lawrence Peters in 1969 came up with the fact that don't promote people outside of their comfort area or outside of their ability. A great salesman is not necessarily going to be a great sales manager. A great engineer is not necessarily going to be a great lieutenant. Hire people that have the skills for the job. Those are the leaders you want. Help them become better. You're doing them a great disservice by promoting them into a job they're going to fail at. Part of picking the right person is looking at their education. Is education more important than experience, or is experience more important than education? I think there has to be a balance of both. Let's first talk about education. The fire service in the United States is loaded with opportunities to learn. And what I believe is the best opportunity is the National Fire Academy in Emmitsburg, Maryland. I've graduated from that and took several classes on leadership there, taught by some of the premier leaders in the fire service. That coupled with local community colleges, NFPA classes. There are classes out there that you should seek out and take. Conferences, the National Fire Chiefs Conference, or any one of those are opportunities for you to learn from others. Some of the best education I had was back at the Fire Academy when we were sitting around having lunch talking about issues in other departments and learning from others and what their experiences were and what they did. Next thing was experience. I've been doing this for 37 years this year. And in those 37 years, I've made a lot of mistakes. Tried not to repeat those mistakes, but what I learned from those mistakes was this is the way it should be done. And sometimes I just couple that experience with that education and balance the two together, and goes back to that statement I made earlier about the science of management versus just leading and putting the whole picture together. Don't pick the person everybody likes. Pick the person who people will learn to respect. You might find they're the same person. The job of leading is difficult. It's not always easy. It's not always fun. So if you hire the person and make them the leader that everybody wants to have fun with, when it comes down to making the difficult decisions, they're going to have a difficult time with that. Don't hire the person who always wants to make the difficult decisions and not appreciate and respect their people. You can have the same. I believe that when I'm working with a company or my engine company or my chiefs, that we're all on the same page. We can be friends. But when it comes down to making the hard decisions, that's where the leader steps up. And that's the person you want. Not the person who says, I'm not going to do this because they're my pal. I'm going to do this because they're my pal. And because that needs to be done. The organization comes first. And you know what? I believe that if you instill that in your people, that they'll understand when they make a mistake and you have to come down on them exactly why. Let's talk about some of the pitfalls of some leaders. First one I can think of is they become a little full of themselves. It's interesting, and I fell to this as well. When you promote somebody for the first time, that's a pretty good feeling. In the fire service, where you move from rank to rank to rank, that makes you feel pretty good. When you start putting things on your collar, that means something. Be aware that it shouldn't change who you are. What's on your collar doesn't change what's in your heart or your brain. And I will tell you, no matter how hard you try, you put Chiefs bars on somebody's, and their head's going to swell a little bit. And the swelling will go down, and their people will bring them back to reality. But it's something you have to be aware of. Don't be so full of yourself. Next thing is, you've worked with that person that every time they come into the room, they believe they're the smartest person in the room. They have the answer to every question. They know everything. And they'll tell you they know everything. Don't be that person. Some of the best leaders do nothing more than just to listen what's going on. If you're incident command of a fire, sometimes the best thing to do is do nothing more than look at the problem and see what's going on. Let your people do the work. You train them. They know what they're doing. Listen, watch what they're doing. You don't have to have all the answers. I mentioned earlier that I learned a lot from my parents. My father's an amazing man, and he's taught me a lot of things. One of the things I disagree with him is the next thing I believe are pitfalls of some leaders. And that is, do as I say, not as I do. And in today's world, when I was growing up, that was fine. Don't do that because I said don't do that. I lived with that. That was how I started the fire service. Today, people don't work that way. They want to know they're looking at you and lead by example. If you want everybody to look sharp in their uniforms, then by golly, you should be looking sharp in your uniform as well. That's important. Don't say just do it because I said to do it. Show them what you want. Do it because it's the right thing to do. Another example might be with training. Leaders are too busy to go to training. I got better things to do. And it might be a new subject. It might be a subject that is kind of like an old subject we've revised. And I don't need to do that. I've already done that. I've seen situations where leaders have said, I'm not going to go sit in class with you because I already know it. And then when it comes to the drill or the actual emergency incident, they're not playing on the same game. They're not doing it the same way. And it confuses those who took the class and took the training. I've watched leaders, after a debriefing of a drill, offer their opinion that has absolutely nothing to do with what we just taught everybody else. Not only does it make it look bad, but it sends the message, I don't have to do the same thing as you. And that's not what we want to say. I'll give you an example of the next one. Next topic I want to talk about is these pitfalls. These leaders, they overpromise and they underdeliver. And here's where I fell into that trap. I was just promoted to deputy chief in an organization. Remember I talked about that whole head swelling thing? It was happening. And I was going to save the world. I had a whole list of things I was going to accomplish, and I wanted to fix it all. So what I did is I wrote a big poster board of all the objectives I'm going to accomplish for a year. And I put it right behind my desk. I says, I'm going to do all these things. A year later, I was in a meeting in my office with somebody, and they looked up at the board, and they says, which one of those have you done yet? And I turned around and looked at it and realized I hadn't done anything. I promised I would do this and never got to it because the job took me away from my objectives. So I overpromised and I didn't deliver. And you know what? They saw it. Hey, look at this guy. He says he's going to do this and he does nothing. We got the same old type of leader here. One of the biggest lessons I learned. So now I try to, I promise realistically and deliver. Because that way you're seeing you're seeing change happen. You're showing them that you're doing what you said you're going to do. The other pitfall they have is they just can't stop talking. Some leaders just can't stop. I don't know if they just want to hear themselves talk. But as I said earlier, sometimes the best tool is listening. I used to work for a chief who said, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them appropriately. I believe that. Sometimes I love sitting at the coffee table in the fire station, having a cup of coffee, and just listening to what's being said. Or sitting in a meeting when you're with the rest of your management team and just listening to what they're saying. By listening, you can so hear what's going on within your organization. What are they talking about? Why are they saying that? I've never heard that. Sometimes just stop talking. And some of the leaders just can't do that. And the next thing is, it's all about them. I believe leaders should be humble. I'm not the best. I'm just the person who took this job. It should be about the team, and we'll talk about this later. But it's not all about you. It's about the success of the team, the success of the organization, the success of the company. The next pitfall of some leaders is being wrong is not an option. Being wrong is absolutely an option. You can never always be right. And I've learned more from the mistakes I made, as I mentioned earlier, than I ever did from being right. It's okay to step up and say, hey, I was wrong. When I would do a debriefing of a fire, when I was a battalion chief, one of the first things I did in the group, everybody was at the same fire that I was at. I was command. And what I would do is I would start out with saying, hey, this is what I did wrong. I could have done better at this. And what it did to the crew there and the team was, well, if the boss is going to admit that he might have made a mistake or two and he can learn, well, then maybe I did the same thing. And what I found is it brought out a little more conversation. Well, geez, Chief, if you did that, I could have done better over here, and that might have helped you. And what I found was in the debriefing, we started having more conversations. And guess what? I'm the same. I'm as the leader. I'm just part of the same team they are. No different. My job, my role might be different, but I can make mistakes too. And a good leader will admit to those mistakes and help other people not make those mistakes. Which leads me into the last thing on what I believe is pitfalls. They won't grow with the job. They believe what they know today is all they ever need to know about leading. I've seen people with 30 years in the fire service do 1 year 30 times. And they've never learned. They've never grown beyond what they did out of rookie school. I am so much smarter than I was when I walked out of the rookie school and they said, here, you can do it now. I just started. And I want every firefighter, every police officer, everybody who's coming out of school, who's aspiring to be a leader in the organization someday, to remember that you want your next year to be better than the last one. Don't just repeat the same things over and over again. You won't grow with the job. So let's switch gears now. We've talked about how do we pick leaders. We've talked about some of the pitfalls and problems that leaders may have. Let's talk about the qualities of good leaders. And these are in no particular order. They're just thoughts I've come up with and things I believe. And the first one is, I believe good leaders surround themselves with good people or help the people they have or inherit get better. I have the pleasure and the honor of working as an incident commander and leading a team of brilliant fire service professionals in my mind at these large-scale fires in Oregon throughout the summer. And I really believe that as the leader of the team, I've surrounded myself with such talent that it's a pleasure to just let them go do great things. Give them some direction. I don't always have to have all the answers, like I said earlier. I don't have to always lead them. Just sitting there and giving them guidance and giving them the reins to do their job. That's what good leaders do. Let your company officers do their job. You've trained them well. Don't micromanage them. Surround yourself with good people and let good people do good things. Good leaders recognize that they are not the most important person on the team. They don't have all the answers. They're not the most important. I look back to my son just started playing football. He's learning about football. He wants to be the quarterback because the quarterback is the most important person, Dad. They get to throw the ball. It's the quarterback. I says, but what about the guy protecting the quarterback? If you didn't have that line in front of you, what would happen? Well, you get tackled. Well, is that person more important than the quarterback? Well, yeah. He says the same thing in the fire service. Just because I'm sitting in the right seat of an engine or I have a Chiefs car, I'm not the most important person on the team. Remember, it's a team. Everybody has equal share of the team and the success of the team. Everybody's equally important. We can all have different jobs, but we're all equally important. The next quality of a good leader is they realize your rank is a title. It doesn't and shouldn't define who you are as a person. If you get so hung up in being a lieutenant, a captain, a battalion chief, a fire chief, that you forget who you are, you're not going to do nobody any good. All that knowledge that you have, all that experience that you have, should be this overarching principle you believe in, not what's on your collar, not what's what your business card says who you are. I said this earlier about a pitfall. Let's just reverse it. I believe we realistically promise and over-deliver. I was inspired by this man I used to work with years ago. He was a radio technician. And he would come into the station and he would in the old days of radios are not as easy to deal with as they are today. He'd build things to make it work for us. And we would ask, hey, can you do this? And his response was always, the difficult I can do right now, the impossible will take just a little longer. I love that saying. Realistically promise, I can do this. And I'm confident I can get this done. And then when I can do that, I then do a little more. Over deliver. Always leave them going, wow, I didn't see that one coming. Another quality of a good leader is they check their egos at the door. I don't know how many times I've had people, say to you, or when you talk to them, I'm the chief. You'll address me as chief. One thing, I've been a chief for many years now. And the one thing I don't like outside of the fire ground, outside of the emergency incident, I don't like being referred to as chief. It kind of goes back to that, I've lost my person, I've lost my identity. I'm a chief. I understand the respect, I appreciate the respect. But check your egos at the door. If you're the leader that has to be looked upon as the boss, the chief, the lieutenant, the captain, and that's the one thing that you identify with, your ego's getting in your way. And once your ego gets in your way, what are you not doing? You're not paying attention to the team. You're not paying attention to the problem. Are you looking at the fire, trying to figure out what's going on? Or are you looking in the mirror, looking at you? Leave the ego at the door. There's no place for it on an emergency incident, and you don't really need it as a leader. Let's continue talking about qualities of a good leader. They provide vision and direction. How is your team going to follow you? How are the people that are working for you going to know where we're going if you don't tell them? I worked in organizations where as a company officer, as a firefighter, I just didn't know what the direction we were going. Where is this organization going to happen? What is the vision of the boss? What does the fire chief think of the organization or where we should be? How we were going to grow? Leaders provide vision and direction. And good leaders will then allow those people below them or other members of the team to take that vision and make it happen. People want to do good work. People want to provide for the organization. Nobody comes to work and says, I don't want to do a good job today. I want to know where we're going. I want to participate. I want to be an active member of this organization or this team. Tell me where we're going and I'll help you get there. I promise you, if as a leader you give them vision and give them direction, they're going to help you get to it because you can't get there all by yourself. Another quality of a good leader, they will support their people because they matter the most. But hold them accountable. Support them. The team is the most important. The members of the team are the most important. Support them. And when I say support, that's not just professionally, that's personally. I've had people, part of my team, come to me with serious medical issues, family issues, and want to talk about it. They need help. They need support. Sometimes the policies don't lend themselves to supporting the people. Get new policies. Break the rules. Because I will tell you, if you help those people out in really difficult times, professionally, personally, or whatever, they will take care of you in the long run. They will be there when you're having that same difficult time. I've had opportunities where life didn't go so well for me today or this week or whatever. And you know what? It's a great feeling as the team leader when the team says, hey, we got you now. We'll help you up because you're always there helping us up. Support your people. They matter the most. The next quality of a good leader is they realize that teaching and supporting will always be better than discipline. I've seen in organizations where people are demoted because they didn't do the job right. I'm going to get rid of them because they don't know what they're doing. They're messing things up. They're causing me more problems. So we'll just demote them. We'll move them out. We'll make them retire. Is that the right way to do it? I don't believe so. I think good leaders recognize if someone's having a problem, they don't understand their job, then they give them the tools to do that, to learn their job. What do you expect from them? What do they expect from you? Support them, make them successful. I'm not suggesting that it works every time. Some people out there will be put in positions they can't learn. I would love to be a jet fighter pilot. I'm never going to be able to have the opportunity to do that. So find those people that can and make them better. Support them and teach them. Send them to the opportunities to make them successful. This one's a difficult one, but good leaders recognize this next bullet point. And I've personally told this to my management team and to my organization, is the team gets the wins, the leader gets the losses. What I mean by that is when something good happens, when the football team wins the Super Bowl, the team won. People that lost this Super Bowl, the coaches might have lost. As a leader, let your team relish in their wins, their successes. They'll want to continue to do better. When something bad happens, when there's a loss, when we didn't do it so well, maybe look to you as a leader and says, what could I have done to fix that? Did I see it coming and did nothing about it? Did I let it happen? Give your wins to your team. And I tell you what, if you do that, I think your losses will go down. When I was a young firefighter, I realized that if I wasn't told I couldn't do it, then I must be able to do it. Actually, I correlate an expression my father used to always say. My dad did something great, and that was he told me what the line was. This is the line you never cross. If you cross it, there's consequences. If you don't cross it, you'll be fine. And good leaders recognize that sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. And that's what I'm talking about here. Oops, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. If I wasn't told I couldn't do it, then I must be able to do it. If you go back to supporting your team members, if you have a policy that gets in the way of doing the right, compassionate human thing for somebody, change the policy. And before you can change the policy, help them out. I'd rather stand in front of the boss and say, oops, sorry, didn't know I couldn't do that. I won't do it again. Versus doing something that's wrong and you know it's wrong and it's going to detriment the team. Try it. Ask for forgiveness rather than permission. We talked a little earlier about the team, and you're not the most important person on the team. But I asked the question here, who is the most important person on your team? Good leaders know who that is. And the answer is plainly obvious, and I learned it in a class I took in order to be an incident commander for these teams. That question was posed to us. Who's the most important person of your team? And people say, well, it's the incident commander. No, it's the planning section chief. Nah, it's operations. It's all about operations. The answer was the question was staring us in the face. The most important person on the team is the one that's struggling the most today. I don't know how often I've seen leaders and people watch the team fall apart. Hey, Bob's doing a terrible job today. And get after Bob. Good leaders are not afraid to jump in the trenches and help the team be successful. As an incident commander of this team, we put together an incident action plan every day for every operational period in a major fire or an emergency incident. And there's a lot of paperwork that has to do. Incident commanders don't fill out forms. But when my resource unit leader or the person that's supposed to fill out those forms is inundated with those, I have a pencil and I can write and I know what to put down on the form too. There's no reason why you can't help. Just because you're the leader, you're not above getting your hands dirty. Maybe a better analogy of that is the weakest link of the chain always breaks. A leader can polish and work on all the strong links, but if you don't pay attention to that one person or that one link that is struggling the most and it's going to break, if it breaks, the whole team will suffer. And it goes back to you didn't get a win, you just got a loss. As a good example of that last bullet was you as the team leader didn't fix the weakest link. Now you're dealing with a loss. Good leaders, they make the hard right decisions and not the easy wrong ones. It's easy to go, it's simple and it's easy and it doesn't take any work just to make a decision that's wrong because you made a decision. I've heard this before. Do something, just make a decision. I don't know, sir, I always agree with that. Take some time and make the right decision. It may be the hard one. Your people will respect you if you tell them and jump into the situations which aren't pleasant. It's not good. It's not easy to discipline somebody or tell them they're doing things wrong. It's kind of a difficult thing to do. But you got to do it. Good leaders will point out to their team, you made a mistake here. This is what I expect. And fix it. Don't make the easy wrong decision. Because quite often, if it's an emergency scene, if it's a structure fire, that easy wrong decision, I'm not going to pay attention to that smoke. I'm not going to make a deal with that because, it's nothing. It could be something. It could be telling you something that you miss. Take some time. Make the hard right decision. Don't take the easy way out. Good leaders, they show confidence publicly and worry privately. So what does that mean? I've had people tell me before that, boy, you at a fire, you seem right on game. I'm in the office, I'm having all kinds of fun. I think sense of humor is a great thing. In the office, people are having fun. One time as a battalion chief, one of the ladies who work in the office says, I'd like to go to a fire with you sometime. And sometime down the road, she was in the office, I was in the office, and there was a fire. She says, come on, you can come with me. And after it was all said and done, she says, you're so different. You were so different. And I says, what do you mean? She says, you were quiet, you were focused, you were paying attention, you weren't talking, there was no jokes. I says, because that's not the time for jokes. If I'm the leader of the team and I'm looking at a situation where I don't like, it scares me, what kind of confidence am I giving to the team as they look back and says, oh, dang it, the boss is scared. Should I be worried? And I'm not suggesting you don't pay attention to your gut and follow through with that. But it's called command presence for a reason. Stand in front of there, show confidence, inspire them to be better. And then when you get back, it's okay to worry about it. It's okay to say, I was afraid. I was scared of that one. I didn't like the feeling I had. But do it privately. Or find somebody you're close to talk about it. But publicly in front of the team, stand with confidence. Show that command presence. I will tell you that will do more to inspire them to get the job done, especially in the really difficult situations. The confidence we just talked about on the fire ground or the emergency incident is hugely important. But back at the office, back in the organization, your people know that there may be problems in the organization. And if you're overconfident or portray that false bravado that everything's going to be fine and we're good and hide behind your confidence, that's not going to work either. Be realistically confident. It's okay to have a problem and show some confidence in your team that says, we have problems, but we're going to fix our problems and we're going to do it together. Good leaders understand that their success is measured by the success of the people that work for them. You want your people to take your job when you're done with it. They can't have it any sooner. But when you're done with it, it's a good feeling to walk out saying, you know what? I've left this place in good hands. One of my biggest personal successes that I've talked about this day to people is I had a young woman who came to me. She was a volunteer when I was the deputy chief of an organization. And she says, I want to be a paramedic. And this young woman, she came from kind of a broken home and life wasn't always so good, but she wanted to be a paramedic and she had a huge amount of compassion, but she said, Chief, I can't afford it. I said, I'll tell you what, you go to school, we'll pay for it. And we paid for her paramedic. Today, she's a full-time full-time lieutenant and paramedic and sits on the national board of women's firefighters. When I left that organization, she came up to me and she says, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. She was crying. She gave me a card and said just that. And right at that very moment, I realized that is a measure of my success. It wasn't because I was a chief. It wasn't because I was going to a bigger organization. It's because I made as a leader an impact on somebody's life that now they were able to live out their dream. That's what I want. I want the person who says, I learned from that person. He's made me successful. He's out the door. I want his job. Don't be afraid of people who are going to challenge you to do your job. That's what you want. You know what? You should come to work as a supervisor, as a leader with tennis shoes on, because you should have to keep up with your people because they're going to push you to be successful, because they're after your job. Not because they don't think you can do it. It's because you've inspired them to do it and be better at it. Good leaders don't let the naysayers stand in their way. What I mean by that is you can come in overconfident. We talked about confidence a while ago. You can come in confident, and when leaders take over organizations that are really in trouble or teams that are really in trouble, you're going to have those people who say, yeah, it's going to be the same old thing. You're not going to change anything. Nobody else was able to change anything. Why are you going to change anything? You're just going to tell us what you think, and nothing's going to change. You're going to have those people. Now, you can let those people stand in your way. You can let those people bring you down. Or the best feeling of all is when those naysayers say, you know what, I was wrong. You did what you said you were going to do. I stood in your way and you went right over me. And then you looked back and grabbed me and took me with you. That's a good feeling. Everybody's got doubts. Everybody has questions. Everybody has concerns. But good leaders will take those naysayers and then turn them around and be followers. They'll lead them. They'll be future leaders of the organization. You can do it. Don't let them stand in your way. Bring them along with you and show them what you're going to do. Another one, good leaders, they follow the 40-70 rule. Before they make a decision, they make sure they have at least more than 40% of the information in order to make the decision. Because anything less than 40, you're flying in the dark. You're going to make a wrong decision. You may make an inappropriate decision. Get 40% of the facts before you make a decision. And don't wait for over 70%. Because after 70%, you've waited too long. You know, more information is going to make you make a right decision. So follow the 40-70 rule. Don't wait over 70 and wait until you at least get 40% of the information so you can make a solid decision that's going to benefit you, the team, the problem, the organization. We'll give a couple examples of the 40-70 rule. In the organization as the chief, man, let's say you want to restructure the organization. You can do that really quickly and say, you move here, we're going to make this, we're going to do this, and this is the reporting rules. This is the command structure of the fire department. Put a little thought into it. What's the direction of the organization I want to go? What do I want to accomplish here? What is the rule? What do I want to see the outcome be? And at some point, you know the answer to the question, but you can continue looking for more information, and you've gone past the 70%. And just make the decision. At the company level, let's take a look at a fire. If I rush in and not know the facts without doing a 360, that's less than 40% of the knowledge I have of the fire. If I wait and continue looking at the fire, what's going to happen? I get past 70%, and now it's going to start falling in. There's a sweet spot in the middle where you need to make the decision and go in and do it. Because if you wait too long, the problem is going to change, and now you have a new problem. And lastly, one of the qualities of a good leader, I believe, is they recognize that when the hair on the back of their neck stands up, it means something. When you walk into a situation, whether it's an emergency situation on the fire ground, and I've done many of those where I just don't feel good about this. Something bad's going to happen. I don't know where it came from. Maybe it's a situational awareness issue. Maybe I've seen it in the past. but I just don't feel good about this. And if you don't feel good about it, it doesn't work for you, then step back, reanalyze it, look at it again. Find out what's bugging you about this, and don't put anybody in harm's way, and don't wait too long to make a decision. But look at the whole fact. If your gut tells you something, odds are it's probably right. And that's where that experience comes in from a leader, is they don't feel good about this. And it can happen outside of emergency. It can happen in your organization after a staff meeting. When you leave the staff meeting, it says, I don't feel good about the flow of the conversation. I don't feel good about how I left it. Or you're dealing with an employee. You're trying to deal with the team or work with the team. I just don't feel like we're getting there today, guys. What's going on with the team here? Recognize that the team's not working well. That hair in the back of your head, your gut tells you something. That, I got to pay attention to the team because they need something's going on. They need some help. So we talked about picking a good leader. I talked about pitfalls of leaders. We talked about some of the qualities I believe happens in good leaders and good leaders need. But you know what? As I look around and the leaders and the people that have inspired me and people I look up to, I look at one that I've followed, and that's General Powell. I want to talk about some thoughts from General Colin Powell, retired Secretary of State, General of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I think there's a lot to learn from him. And one of the things he says is the day your people stop bringing you their problems is the day you've stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help them, or they concluded that you don't care. Either way, it's a failure to lead. And I sat there and when I read that, I thought, boy, that speaks a lot. If you're sitting in the corner office and people have said, yeah, it's lonely at the top, well, maybe that means nobody's coming to your corner office. Nobody wants to talk to you because you don't care. One of the promises I made to the organization when I stepped up as fire chief, he says, you know what? I want to come to the fire stations. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to be there so you can tell me what needs to be done. I think that's important. When people stop coming to you with good things or bad things, they don't have confidence in you. And you lose the confidence of your people, they're not going to follow you. Look at the company officer level. You're sitting in the right front seat of that engine, and you have 3 other people in that engine with you. They're looking for you for direction. And if they don't feel that you have their best heart, and they can't come to you with a problem, a concern, or whatever, are they going to go into that building with you? Are they going to perform at the highest level they need to perform? Probably not. So make sure you take you look at that barometer and say, hey, you know what? Something's going on here. I don't see my people. Why is that? Is it me? Another one of his thoughts was, perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. And I'm not talking about that what me smile where everybody can just say you're happy and all that. I'm talking about that leader that walks into the organization and says, you know what, I'm gung-ho. I'm inspired here. You guys inspire me. I want to make things better. I want to make things work for you. You have a leader that walks in and starts talking like that, everybody's going to start getting on board. And you know what? The other thing I found out is when one person gets on board, then they start helping the other naysayers. Hey, wait a minute. He said he was going to do this. Nobody said that before. Guess what? He's doing that. He's happy to come to work. He wants me to be happy to come to work. That's what I'm talking about. Make sure the organization realizes that you'll worry about the problems, but you're perpetually optimistic that we're going to get better. And when you start convincing one person, then one person will convince another person, and that will multiply exponentially through the organization. And then one day you'll realize that, hey, we're all on the same team. We're all moving in the right direction. The problems have changed. Now let's move on to the next one. Another thought of General Powell, great leaders are almost always great simplifiers who can cut through the argument, debate, and doubt to offer a solution everybody can understand. All too often you see leaders make things more difficult. They want to overthink it. They want to make it worse than it is. Cut to the chase. What's the solution? Now, I'm not suggesting you forget the 40-70 rule, but what I'm saying is it doesn't always have to be difficult. You know, simplify it. Sometimes the answer is looking you right in the face. And sometimes we're afraid to do what's obvious. Just do the obvious thing. Simplify your problems. Good leaders recognize that. They don't have to make it more difficult than what it is. Another way to look at this is organizations want to make things difficult. And it uses a lot of energy, expends a lot of energy making things difficult. A good leader is going to recognize that we're getting nowhere. We're making it worse for ourselves. And bring them back together and get them back on track to do the simple, the right thing to do. So, coming to the end of our conversation today. We've talked about picking good leaders. We've talked about pitfalls of those leaders, what they usually do wrong or could do wrong. We've talked about qualities in my mind of what good leaders are and examples of a good leader and what he thought. I'm not sure I've answered all the questions about being leadership or about being a leader. But what I asked you early on when we started this conversation, so are you ready? I think you are. I think there's a lot of people watching this that says, gosh, it's scary. Being a leader is scary. I get it. But the future leaders of the organizations and the fire service are still out there. There's those of us who are leaving. And we got to look for the future. We've got to help those people be successful. I ask all the leaders out there now, look within your organization. Find those people to take your job and help them be successful when they do. Because if we don't help them be successful, we're going to wake up someday and we realize that nobody's leading this boat. Nobody's leading us. That's the charge I have for you. As a leader in your organization, go out and find those people who are ready to take over your job and help them be successful. Pay it forward. And the one thing you should tell them is once you get to my job, pay it forward. Do it for the next person. That's pretty perpetual at that point. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.